All right, so we're going to find the exact values of y here. And so we got y is equal to the inverse cosine of square root of 2 over 2. So we're going to do just like what we did before. We're going to go ahead and take our inverse. So that means we're going to have cosine of y is equal to square root of 2 over 2. Remember, you got to think about your quadrant, and because this is inverse cosine, we know that that's going to be between 0 and pi, which means we're only looking in quadrants 1 and 2 for our answers. Cosine is what value, x or y? X.
Do you have to write that 0 less than or equal to y?
You don't have to write that. That's in my little thought bubble because that's what I'm thinking. You need to make sure at this point that you're thinking, oh, okay, I'm only looking at quadrants 1 and 2 here for my answer.
I can figure that out, I think.
Okay, you don't have to write it. You don't have to write it. All right, so cosine is x. So using your hand, x is what? My fingers from above or below? Above. So I need, it's a square root of 2, so I need 2 fingers above. So when I do that, here's my 2 fingers that are above. So this is the angle I'm looking at. What angle is that? It's pi over 4. Now I forgot to ask though, cosine here is positive. Is that quadrant 1 or 2? It's quadrant 1. So our angle is going to come from quadrant 1, and you just said that that angle there in quadrant 1 is pi over 4. All right, so P says y equals the arc cosine of negative 1/2. Guys, arc, the trig function is the same as the inverse, okay? It used to be more popular before, and now they don't, you don't see it used as much, but it just means the inverse. So I'm actually going to just take it, I'm going to write the inverse cosine right above it, because it's the same exact thing. So I'm going to take the inverse. So cosine of y equals negative 1/2. Remember, I'm thinking about my quadrant. So cosine, you told me earlier, was x. And x is negative. What quadrant are we in, 1 or 2? Quadrant 2. Which means when I use my hand, that's going to give me that reference angle. All right, but let's use our hand to find that reference angle then. So since x is, we know we're in quadrant 2, so that's the negative, so don't worry about it. So which angle has the x that's going to be a 1 there, or 1/2? So that means I need 1 above, right? So this is my finger, which is pi over 3. But now remember this, I'm going to come down here below it. This is pi over 3, which means it's my reference angle over here to this one, which means this angle here is also pi over 3. So how are we going to find that quadrant 2 angle? It's pi over 3 before the pi, isn't it? So we're going to take pi and subtract pi over 3. Which is?
Wait, why are you subtracting it?
Because it's before it. So see, right here we're at pi. Right here is pi. And I'm pi over 3 before the pi, so subtract it. Because it's smaller.
Is that just, wait, why are we using the reference?
Well, the reference angle is using my fingers, so I was able to find it. And to find the quadrant 2 angle, I take that reference angle and I subtract it from pi. And we end up with 2 pi over 3. And that is the answer then for our quadrant 2 angle.